These are 3 scary true stories that happened to people while working the night shift. I used to work nights at a gas station on the outskirts of a small town in Vermont. It was usually quiet and uneventful, with plenty of time for me to just browse my phone or read a book. But one night stands out as the creepiest experience I've ever had. It was a chilly autumn night, and it was especially dark with the moon hidden behind heavy clouds. The only sources of light were the glow of the gas station's canopy and the headlights of the occasional passing car. I was behind the counter, idly flipping through a magazine, when the bell above the door jingled. This startled me as I hadn't seen any car pull up. I looked up to see a tall man with a hood pulled low over his face. He wore a tattered long black coat that looked like it had seen better days, and his demeanor was odd to say the least. He seemed very tense, and he kept his head down and avoided eye contact. He walked up and down a few aisles without really stopping to look at anything, and then approached the counter. I could see his hands were trembling. He placed a few crumpled bills on the counter and asked for a pack of cigarettes. As I handed him the pack and gave him his change, he suddenly looked up, locking eyes with me. His gaze was intense, and the hair on my neck stood up a bit. His eyes were an eerie shade of pale blue, almost translucent, and they seemed to pierce right through me. He muttered something under his breath that I couldn't quite make out, and then abruptly left the store. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief as the door jingled again, signaling his departure. I watched him disappear into the darkness outside, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. Only minutes later, I heard a loud bang on the store's glass door. Startled, I rushed over to see the same man, his hood now completely off, and his face contorted in fear. He frantically opened the door while pointing behind him and yelling something about them following him. I couldn't see anything in the darkness outside, but his terror was unsettling. I quickly locked the door to hopefully put him a bit at ease, and called 911, explaining the situation. The man was panicking, and I did my best to calm him down while waiting for the police to arrive. He kept repeating that he'd seen something in the woods, something that he shouldn't have seen, and now they were looking for him. The fear in his eyes was genuine, and it honestly sent my own heart racing. When the police arrived, they searched the surrounding area but found nothing unusual. They took the man's statement and assured him that they would investigate. He was also eventually taken to the hospital as a precaution, as he appeared to be in a state of severe distress and was having difficulty calming down. After that night, I never saw or heard from that man again, nor did I hear any news about incidents in the area that might have explained what he could have seen in the woods. That night left me with an uneasy feeling that something truly bizarre had occurred. To this day, I still wonder what he saw that terrified him that much. I used to work as a security guard and spent a few weeks working the night shift at an old abandoned factory that was scheduled for disassembly and demolition. This place had a bit of a grim history, with rumors of accidents and a few mysterious disappearances during its operational years. It was my job to patrol the vast complex of buildings and corridors, mostly to alert police if I saw suspicious activity. There had been quite a few recent break-ins from people salvaging scrap metal and wire. One night, as I was doing my rounds, I heard what sounded like faint music echoing through the hallways. It sounded like an old, out-of-tune piano playing a weird dissonant melody. I followed the sound, trying to pinpoint its source, which led me through a series of narrow maintenance hallways. My heart was pounding in my chest as I got closer and closer to the chilling music, and as I turned a corner, I couldn't believe what I saw. There it was, an actual, upright piano pushed against a brick wall, very out of place in this environment. A heavy sheet was draped over half of it, and a strong wind was coming in through a nearby broken window. With each gust, the wind moved the edge of the sheet just enough for it to gently press a few of the piano's keys like a delicate, ghostly arm. I paused for a moment to appreciate the strange beauty of the unbelievable scene before me. As I cautiously approached, I felt the icy draft of the open window meet my skin. I hesitated, but eventually mustered the courage to pull the sheet off the piano and onto the floor. The music stopped, and an unsettling silence fell through the room. My heart was still racing from the adrenaline as I backed out of the room, leaving the piano uncovered. From that night on, I started noticing strange things happening more frequently. Lights would turn on and off, I'd hear whispers in empty dark rooms, and I even saw shadowy figures moving in my peripheral vision. I was convinced the place was haunted, and I started dreading my shifts. One night, I swear I heard the sound of that piano playing again, but when I went to investigate, the sheet remained untouched on the floor. That was the breaking point, and I soon after requested transfer to another site through my company. I used to work as a night security guard at a near-century-old private school. Like many old buildings do, it had a rich history of ghost stories and hauntings, many of them centered around the school's theater. One of them was about a man who used to work on the stage crew who fell 50 feet to his death from rafters above the stage while rigging cables. Some say they've seen his face peering down from the rafters during rehearsals. Another story is about a woman who, on opening night of a play, died suddenly from a heart attack right in front of her dressing room mirror. Many of the students apparently refused to use that dressing room before shows, the stories ranging from it bringing bad luck, or that it gets unnaturally cold, or that bulbs around the mirrors buzz and flicker even if they've just been changed. I didn't buy much into these stories at the time, until one particular night. Despite the ghost stories, the theater was also a popular spot for many of the drama students to hang around after hours. They'd often be running like maniacs, playing hide-and-seek tag through the labyrinth of backstage hallways, or putting on their own silly productions on stage hours after their actual rehearsals finished. I remember what it was like to be that age, so I'd often give them a bit of space, but there would come a time of night where I'd have to kick them out. One night, I'd just finished doing my sweep of the theater, and had sent a small group of them home. This was around 10 p.m. A couple hours later, just before midnight, one of the custodial staff radioed me that she'd heard voices and footsteps through the theater doors, but that the doors were locked and they didn't have a key. Damn it, those kids, I thought. I'd obviously missed a group of them somehow. A couple minutes later, I'd made my way back to the theater doors. Sure enough, I could hear a few muffled voices from far inside the theater. I hastily unlocked the doors and shouted in, "Hey, what the hell are you guys still doing here? It's after midnight." The voices stopped, but I heard their footsteps move across the stage. The auditorium lights were on, but very dim, too dim to make out anything on the stage from the back of the theater. Guided by the light of my flashlight, I made my way down an aisle to the stage, climbed the side staircase and proceeded backstage. I called again, "Guys, time to go." No response, but I could make out a few footsteps echoing down a staircase to the basement, where some of the dressing rooms were. By my guess, it sounded like maybe 2 or 3 students. What was odd was that there was no giggling or whispering, just hasty footsteps distancing themselves from my calls. I admit, even though I didn't believe much into the supernatural, the thought of following them alone into the dark theater basement at midnight gave me a very uneasy feeling, and the lack of voices was unsettling. I carefully made my way down the dark stairs, shadows cast by my flashlight dancing along the floor and up the walls. The air in the basement was noticeably cooler than the floor above, and had that damp, dusty smell indicating the building's age. The sound of the footsteps had stopped. I held my breath for a moment to listen. The hallway was so quiet that I could hear my own blood rushing in my ears. About 40 feet down the hallway, I noticed a faint warm glow from the crack below a dressing room door. I figured, if these idiots are playing games with me at this hour, then I'm gonna scare the crap out of them. "I'm locking up," I called out. "You guys are on your own." I then walked halfway up the stairs making heavy footsteps so they'd be easy to hear. I then turned off my flashlight and tiptoed back down the stairs. I slowly moved down the pitch-black hallway, careful not to make a sound, guided only by the dim yellow glow from under that dressing room door. I made it to the door and paused again. Barely audible but unmistakable, a young female's voice murmured to someone from the other side of the door. I paused for a few more seconds, my hand resting around the cold metal doorknob, and then without warning, I tightened my grip and flung the door open. It swung into the dressing room wall with a loud creak and thud as I jumped in and yelled, "Get out, you fools!" My stomach dropped. The room in front of me was completely empty and illuminated by the warm yellow bulbs around a single mirror. I felt a heavy sense of dread building in the air. There was a sudden buzz, followed by a loud pop as the bulbs around the mirror went out, and a rush of cold air hit me from the pitch-black room. The next moments are a blur. All I remember after that was running as fast as I could down that hallway and back up the stairs. In the state of panic, I didn't even turn on my flashlight, so it's a miracle I didn't trip and crash into a wall in the darkness. But somehow my muscle memory got me out of that basement in seconds. I ran back up the aisle of the theater auditorium and body-checked the entrance door open. I gathered the courage later that shift to return to the theater entrance to lock the doors, but I didn't dare set foot in that theater again for a number of weeks. I spent countless hours reviewing security camera footage from that night, desperate to find images of students or someone on one of the cameras. The security in and around the theater is not extensive, but enough that I should have seen something if someone had been there. The only person on the cameras that night was myself.